Good morning to everybody, and I'd like to thank Dr. Rajib for letting me be a part of this course. I think from the cross-linking we'll just move a step little more deeper inside the cornea into the endothelium. It's not a new tool, it's one of the oldest equipments which was probably made to device to see the endothelium since corneal surgeons realized the importance of the endothelium. So what is it used for is basically to monitor the number, density and the quality of the endothelium for various purposes. Excuse me. And these are basically the optical principles which I think most of us are aware of, and by sending the light which is reflected back due to the interface between the endothelium and the aqueous, we are able to visualize the endothelial cells even on the slit lamp. And there are various ways how it is reflected from the keratocytes, from the fibers. I'll just go ahead. Basically what happens is, this is the reflected light. It's only a 0.22% which is reflected back, and which is what gives us the image which we are always trying to analyze and understand by various softwares and various devices. And this is what a normal endothelial cell looks like. I'll be describing the features of it as we go along. So what are the specular microscopes that are currently available? The clinical ones are of two types, the contact and the non-contact. And then we have the eye bank specular microscopes for evaluating the donor corneas. I'll be limiting this talk to the clinical specular microscopy. And there are certain ones which are attached to the slit lamp as well. So these are the various types which are available. The ones which we use at our center is the non-contact Topcon SP3000. And what is the difference between the contact and non-contact is basically that a contact, of course you would have to use some gel and a lens along with it, so that it is able to give us a much better resolution than a non-contact. But then the ease of repeatability, of decreased technician dependency is more with the non-contact, and as in most ophthalmic diagnostics, non-contact is much more popular than a contact. What is it used for? You can use it for any condition in which you need to evaluate the endothelium, either before cataract surgery or for evaluating the various drugs or various studies to see what effect it is having on the endothelium, the effect of contact lenses on the endothelium. But what do we do? What do we assess when we are trying to do all this? Basically, we are trying to see three things. One is the density, the number of corneal endothelial cells, what is the variation of their size, and what is the variation of their shape. So these are the three things that we are looking at, and along with it, the specular microscope also gives us the corneal thickness. This is what a normal endothelial cell is made up of. These are the parameters that it is defined as basically, and this is what a normal endothelial microscopic picture would look like in most of the systems. And what we are looking at is the hexagonality. If it is hexagonal, it reflects a normal endothelial cell, and when we get a picture of endothelial cell like this, we should have at least 50% and above cells which are hexagonal. That reflects a normally functioning endothelium, and there would be cells which are pentagonal and heptagonal as well. And the boundaries have to be dark, have to be smooth. So that is one more thing that you look at apart from the hexagonality. And further down the line, you can also evaluate the angles of the intersection, but then that would be going a little too deeper as we evaluate the various softwares. So two things to keep in mind is the polymegathism and the pleomorphism. Again, the same thing. One is regarding the size, one is regarding the shape. And what does it look like? This is just an example to show you where we have corneal density, which is of various from 3000 to 2000, and the variability of the shape and size of the cells are there. And there would also be other cells variation which are present, in which there will be elongated cells depending on the effect on the cornea or on the condition. They might be triangular, they might be square, but on the whole, when you're evaluating a normal cornea before cataract surgery, these things would not be of too much relevance at this stage. And of course there are other variations which also you might come across, and depending on the inflammation and other vacuolar structures which are seen while evaluating the endothelium. So basically the next thing would be the quantitative analysis to evaluate the cell area, the cell density and polymegathism. As we all know, the number of cells at birth are somewhere around 3 to 4,000 cells per cubic meter, and then as we go along they keep decreasing with age. So how do we evaluate? There are various ways, various softwares available which have, as the technique has evolved, to evaluate. I'll just briefly run through them. One is a comparison method in which you just have an image of cells of 2,000, 3,000, 1,000 and you just compare randomly whatever you've got to have an idea how much this would be. This is known as a comparative method. There is a frame method in which the software, you just highlight a part of the frame and that automatically picks up the center of the cells and counts them and then gives the various parameters. You can use a variable frame analysis as well. There is a centration method in which you have to pick out manually the cells, the center of the cells in either a circular fashion but practically it's easier to do it in the form of a rectangle, and then the software analyzes the size, shape and the hexagonality. So you have to manually pick out the center of the cells and so that you choose the right cells, and then it gives you a variation of the coefficient of variation, and the larger the variation, obviously that means there is more polymegathism. And again, but there will be more pleomorphism as well as there is more hexagonality. But a thumb rule which just to keep in mind is that in a normal cornea the hexagonality should be more than 60% and coefficient of variation should be less than 30%. I think that would be the simplest thing to keep in mind as to carry as a thumb rule back home. And this is just to give you an idea that same cornea in which you get 2,500 cells can have a very variable coefficient of variation and hexagonality. So just quickly I'll just run through the next 5-6 slides. Is what is a good image? Is image in which you can identify at least over 100-150 cells. That would be ideal. And cells should be easily grouped. There should not be much variation. These are poor quality images. As you can see, some are out of focus, some are blurred. So these would not be good images to do a proper evaluation or comparing any studies. And this is another example of the same poor quality images. And again, and what would be affecting is the proper corneal condition as well, because sometimes you have corneal edema or scars which if itself will reflect give a bad image. And these are what the Guttate look like on the Fuchs dystrophy. And there are just a few tips to capturing a good image. And what I'll do now is move on to the quickly run through the. Shall I run through the impression cytology? Okay, I'll just skip this analysis and coming to the impression cytology. I think it's a very short presentation on that. I also have a very limited experience with it, but it's basically one of the best ways to evaluate the ocular surface. A most non-invasive way in which you use a filter paper. These are the steps to it, that you take a filter paper and then you press it over the conjunctiva, and then the cytopathologist passes it through various fixators, and then it is evaluated in a light microscope. These are the various type of cells, the conjunctival cells which might look like these on the cytology. This is an example of the same, and what on the left hand side is the cytology and the right side shows the histopath of the squamous metaplasia. So it can indirectly give you an idea of the underlying condition just by a very non-invasive way. And it has been very useful in research to evaluate, to understand various chemical burns, what it looks like in Stevens-Johnson syndrome, what are the cells consisting of, and sometimes even evaluating unknown keratitis. But basically, it has its limitation because you need a good cytopathologist, a good pathologist lab, and so clinically it has its limitation in your clinic to be able to use it. Thank you very much.